so much more. It's our voice and our truth, so let's talk about it. All right, here are the headlines for today. The Kentucky Prosecutors Advisory Council is not going to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate the death of Breonna Taylor. The council voted unanimously to reject the request from Taylor's mother, arguing that they don't have the legal authority to appoint the prosecutor. Here's the battle, though. Okay, lawmakers for Taylor's family says the council does have that power. Tamika Palmer is Taylor's mother, and as I mentioned, she called for an independent special prosecutor and a new grand jury to be appointed to the case back in October. Here's what council member Christopher Coron said after reviewing Palmer's petition.
Quite simply put, we do not have the legal authority to fulfill the request that has been submitted. I would make a motion that this finding be the position of the Prosecutors Advisory Council.
Okay. Second.
And that's a second from Courtney, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor of adopting the statements as related from Chris Coron and second by Courtney Baxter as PAC statement, all in favor?
Aye.
After the council announced their agreement on the decision, the public turned their mics on and chimed in opposition. The council's decision came on the same day Taylor's hometown held a special ribbon-cutting ceremony. Now, her hometown is actually Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the ceremony was held to rename Monroe Center Street Northwest Breonna Taylor Way. Alyssa Bates is the president of Justice for Black Lives. She said this to everyone at the ceremony. She said, I want to make one thing clear. That street sign is not equal justice at all. Just because that street sign is being hung, it does not mean we are going to settle. We are going to keep applying pressure to make sure justice is served. Last week, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund released a 26-page report arguing Cameron's office leaned on inaccurate, misleading, and irrelevant information and presented that to the grand jury, all in an effort to give preference to the police department. Something else interesting that happened today, Virginia's Governor Ralph Northam actually signed Breonna's Law. So Breonna's Law is a law that bans no-knock search warrants in the state, and this makes Virginia the third state with a ban, as such, a no-knock warrant ban, and only the first state to do this after Breonna Taylor was killed.
And if you think about it, this is not enough what's going on, right? We're upset. We want justice. They try to cut a check for $12 million. That does not replace her life. Mm-hmm. Her daily work was to save lives, and you came and took her lives. And I'll never forget, and I say this over and over again, she laid there for 20 minutes with no assistance until she passed away. They have to bring this back to court.
Sorry, Demi. What kills me about this particular situation is the fact that Daniel Cameron, who was the prosecutor on the Breonna Taylor case, he's a part of this council. So to me, this reeks of conflict of interest, you know? So, Demi, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No. Literally, we were going to say the same thing. As I was going to say that from the beginning, Daniel Cameron, he mishandled this case from the beginning. But what I want to say really is that I'm really happy that we talk about Breonna Taylor on platforms like this. We have to continue, like Alyssa said, we can't just let street, like Romeo said, money and like street names and things like that stop us. The pressure has to be continuously applied. Yes, we have to keep using hashtags, Twitter, Facebook, wearing our t-shirts and everything like that, because we could have been her. Like, that's what the scary part about this is. Any of us could have been sitting at our homes minding our business, and this could have been us. We are all Breonna Taylor.
It's a fear that seems like conspiracy riddle, but it actually happened.
Yeah.
And really it's terrifying. I want to go back to what Melissa said about Daniel Cameron. He's actually the chair of this council.
Exactly.
And what's interesting is he was not a part of this meeting. He did have a representative there.
The representative left before they
even discussed it. And I wonder if the representative left because, to try to avoid that conflict. But people who are watching this are saying you can't avoid a conflict if you all participate in decision-making processes in other times.
Yeah.
And so, it's just, I think you can almost understand how people on the outside are feeling like nobody has their back in this.
Yeah. I think
and it is very similar, but what's interesting here is we've talked about this before, the studies that show that Black defendants aren't able to successfully use stand your ground laws like white defendants are. So, you know, the odds are not in his favor. And just like you mentioned, we do want to get away from this. We don't want any situation, white or black, where the threat is over and someone still shoots someone.
Exactly.
It's the odds are not in his favor.
Yeah, Brooke, you hit the nail on the head. The stand your ground law, in my opinion, I don't know what anybody else thinks,
a lot of
For
money.
the fact that this is legal, it could be a state over, depending on where you're arrested.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, government officials and healthcare groups are now worried about hackers targeting the supply chain for COVID-19 vaccines. Reporters for The Hill say these concerns have been amplified as the U.S. gets ready to roll out the first vaccines later this month. We're told groups involved in creating and shipping the vaccines are a prime target for potential cyber attacks. Mark Rogers is the executive director of cybersecurity at software group Okta. He told The Hill, "We've noticed an uptick in attacks against all aspects of the vaccine supply chain, from research through to manufacturing and distribution." He says, "My suspicion is that all parties in the cyber criminal underground, from ordinary criminals to nation states, recognize that the vaccines represent a golden opportunity and are responding as such." Now, North Korea has been among such nations, with the Wall Street Journal reporting North Korean hackers targeted at least 6 pharmaceutical groups in the U.S., the United Kingdom, and South Korea. The pharmaceutical companies on the list are all involved in developing a vaccine, including Johnson & Johnson and Novavax. Now, there are currently concerns already around the process to store, ship, and deliver COVID-19 vaccines once they are approved. On that note, hackers are reportedly eyeing non-healthcare groups in the vaccine supply chain as potential targets. The Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Infrastructure Security Agency put out a corresponding alert encouraging U.S. organizations to review the security threat findings. At least one major cold storage group had already been targeted before those alerts were issued. And let me tell you a little bit about that attack, because what happened in that case, I could spend the whole time we have with you talking about that, but I guess I will move on. We got a lot of topics to get to. A recent study shows only 14% of Black Americans trust a COVID-19 vaccine. I'm curious, my question to you, how do we battle the historical reasons for such mistrust in an effort to protect ourselves?
Yeah, it's a great question, too. Look, the fact is, Black people ain't afraid, and I think Reverend Marcia Dyson made this point last week, we ain't afraid of science. We're afraid of scientists. It's what you do with what the stuff you got. We ain't afraid of medicine. We're afraid of medical doctors. We're not afraid of, you know, the data. We're afraid of those who manipulate the data. So we want Black people to feel quite comfortable with taking this vaccine. I'm glad President Obama, President Clinton, President Bush will go out there and do it. And to be President Biden has said he'll do the same thing. But what we have to overcome is a legitimate skepticism and a genuine resistance on the part of Black people who have seen the manipulation of data and science and empirical stuff to our disadvantage. So I understand the healthy skepticism. At the same time, I say to Black folk, instead of dying from COVID in disproportionate numbers and the incredible numbers that we are suffering from, let's at least take a chance on a vaccine that can save us ultimately, or at least reduce the necessity or reduce the likelihood that we'll die from that particular. Forward to it. Y'all are my soulmates. Love y'all. Look at all this ebony ecstasy and furled in coffee. Pleasure. Man, you look good too, man.
Hey, man, thank you for throwing me a bone. Thank you for throwing me a bone. My man.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank y'all.
That's great stuff. All right, inauguration planning has started, y'all, but there are lots of details that still need to be worked out. Things that you might have looked forward to in the past are not likely this time around. A giant parade down Pennsylvania Avenue, fancy balls, no. Get ready for virtual events next month. Even the traditional luncheon, you know, where lawmakers offer their best wishes to the new president, that might not even have food this time. The good news is the inaugural platform on the Capitol's West Front is going up just as it has in the past, but it likely won't be as crowded. Biden's swearing in itself will not be virtual, but guests should be prepared to socially distance and wear a mask. Lawmakers are also considering requiring a COVID-19 test for anyone on the platform near the president-elect. The VIP platform can hold 1,600 people. Lawmakers usually give out tickets for positions nearby, and while no hard decisions have been made, the committee is looking at cutting numbers on both accounts. Now, there haven't been any decisions yet on whether the official inaugural balls should go forward, but some advocacy groups have already decided to go virtual with their galas, including the Human Rights Campaign. The celebrity component of this year's celebration is yet to be determined, but one source close to the inauguration suggested looking for hints in the lineup of celebrities who campaigned for Biden, including Lady Gaga, John Legend, and John Bon Jovi. That's who we want, though, Beyonce, right? They're already working to build the inaugural platform at the Capitol and the White House reviewing stand. That actually started before November 3rd, as is tradition. Something new this year, congressional planners have invited lawmakers to record video messages for the president-elect and vice president-elect that can all be played on jumbotrons before the swearing in. Meanwhile, according to Fox News, Donald Trump is still thinking about holding a rally during the inauguration. Welcome back to the Black Report on Fox Soul, your daily source for news, views, and opinions. If you're just tuning in, here's what you've missed. A Kentucky council denies a recent request in the Breonna Taylor case. A Florida man is in jail accused of chasing a man who attempted to rob his apartment and shooting the man. 14 men were indicted in a massive Harlem drug trafficking case. The House votes to decriminalize marijuana. Hackers threaten to disrupt the COVID-19 vaccine supply chain. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson joined us to talk about his new book, Long Time Coming, and the state of Black America. Inauguration planners are thinking about how to party in a pandemic. To get the full scoop, download the Fox Soul app to watch today's Black Report, also available on Roku, Apple TV, YouTube, Samsung, and Fire TV, Romeo. Really important interview, Melissa. Thank you. Today in Black history, Americans will honor the 79th anniversary of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. On this day, Doris Miller would step into American history by becoming one of the first American heroes of World War II. Miller was a Black sailor who was stationed at Pearl Harbor on battleship USS West Virginia. Under segregation and intense enemy fire, Miller helped get wounded men to safety and manned a machine gun and begun firing at Japanese planes. His unselfish heroics awarded him one of the Navy's highest honors, the Navy Cross. It was awarded to him on May 27, 1942 at Pearl Harbor. Also in 1942, he became one of the first African Americans to be featured on a Navy recruiting poster. That same year, his story was dramatized on the CBS radio series They Live Forever. Today, we also remember Reginald F. Lewis, who was born on this day. Lewis was one of the richest African-American men in the 1980s and the first African-American to build a billion-dollar company, TLC Beatrice International Holdings, Inc. He died January 19, 1993. Former NFL star Terrell Owens celebrates another year of life today. You know, T.O. was a wide receiver who played in the league for 16 seasons. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 5-time first-team All-Pro, and he holds or shares several NFL records. Up next, more news, views, and opinions right here on The Black Report.